Okay, Somer, thank you so much for being here and being a guest on our podcast.
Absolutely, Jesse. I'm so honored to be asked. So thanks for having me.
No problem. No problem. Let's dive in. Let's start off with what got you into the recruiting space.
Yeah. Well, I'll keep it short. So
Hmm.
long story short, I went through the mental gymnastics of what do I want to do after graduating college. And this was back in '02. So the market was kind of funky. But after doing some soul searching and alumni interviews and conversations, I decided I want to go into sales, which everyone that knew me was like, "What?" Because I was majoring in economics and, not the most salesy kind of person. But once I had my heart set on that, I just interviewed for every single sales job I could find on monster.com back in
Hmm.
the day.
Yeah.
And recruiting was one that I found and it just spoke to me. And I was like, cool, it's people and versus stuff. And
Hmm.
I just thought I could do a lot with that. So yeah, the rest is history.
That's perfect. That's perfect. What keeps you going? What makes you want to keep doing it? Is it the fact of just making sure that you're helping people?
I feel like in order to be successful at recruiting, you have to have a lot of grit and self drive and motivation. And for whatever reason, I have all that stuff that I just keep going. But at the end of the day, on a day-to-day basis, it would really just be all the people I'm talking to. I don't necessarily consider recruiting like helping people altruistically. Like we're helping companies, we're helping people, we're helping, but at the end of the day, it's like we're solving business problems, we're helping
Mm.
talent structures, or like there's like helping, sure, there's helping people fill a job, but I think the complexity and just the fascination of all the other stuff that goes into it, it's like I'm constantly blown away by what companies actually do and what
Mm.
people actually do.
Yeah.
And kind of hearing all that, but then just hearing the emotion behind it, like the frustrations of a hiring manager that is working their tail off because they haven't filled a role. Like they need it filled, or
Mm.
the candidate that just wants to land the right thing for their family, So it's just, I have this empathy for everyone I'm talking to. And, I just, that's the stuff that keeps me up at night.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for filling me in there. And when we're talking about clients and candidates that you have and you place for, who's your typical candidate? We have a lot of potential candidates that are listening and that will be
Yeah.
listening to this podcast. Who's your typical candidate? What types of roles and industries do you place in so that the listeners can get a good feel of that?
Yeah. So typical, I would say, is a technology executive. I say C-level, VP level, could be senior director.
Hmm.
Um, I'm pretty industry agnostic, though I do have a pretty big network and gravitational pull toward financial services and fintech. I'm from New York originally. I was in DC, but I do a lot of cross-industry work, and a lot of clients actually say, please don't send us folks directly from our industry. We're looking for folks to get us further ahead than where we are.
Mm.
So it's not always industry specific, but I'd say tech is my bread and butter. And that could be, CIO, CTO, architecture, infrastructure, data, security, all of the above. And then I also do work in tech adjacent roles. So product, user experience, done some marketing, things like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
for the most part, tech execs.
Yeah. Well, I hope our listeners pay attention to what we're going to talk about today because we have a lot of tech execs as clients and listeners to this
Cool.
podcast. And um, I think it's a breath of fresh air what you said about some of your clients, and just to make sure everybody knows, I talk about this almost in every podcast, but clients are the employers,
Right.
candidates are the employees that you place. So your clients sometimes want people from different industries to have that to help them get to that next level. I don't always hear
Mhm.
that, to be completely honest. So I like that point of view that you're seeing. Um, I want to talk about your book, Search in Plain Sight. What inspired you to write that book?
Yeah. And I wasn't the kind of person that was like, I need to write a book. What should it be about? Like it was not on my bucket list. People at the time that reach out to me like, I want to write a book. And I'm like,
Hmm.
what's it about? They're like, I have no idea. I'm like, okay, well, mine was the other order.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
when I finally went off on my own, I've been recruiting for other companies for 20 years and finally decided to launch my own firm. Um, I waited up my non-compete and then I launched and it was February 2020 and I was so pumped, like momentum, LinkedIn posts, here I am. And then it was COVID. I
Mhm.
was like, oh
Yeah.
no. And I just, I didn't feel it was appropriate to drum up business or just pretend nothing was happening. And I took COVID very seriously, honestly. It's like I just pumped the brakes. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to check in with people. How are you? How's COVID? Do you want me to keep you in mind when COVID's over? Because, in the beginning, we thought it was like 2 weeks. But
Yeah.
I found that when you're a recruiter and you call someone and you check in and you have no agenda, like none of this, like, oh, I'm pitching a role or, oh, I'm trying to get a referral or, oh, I'm drumming up business, like just zero agenda, just how are you? People have a lot to say about recruiters, about recruiting, about the process, and very senior people. People are frustrated, and it's kind of like a black box, and they don't really understand why. And especially, it's a few buckets of people. I'd say one are people that have been in the same company 15,
Mhm.
20 years. This is the first time they're looking. They don't even know where to start because these jobs aren't online all the time, or most of the time.
Mhm.
Or like they've always been plucked along by bosses or colleagues, and so they've never had to look.
Yeah.
And they're asking me, okay, how do I create my recruiter relationships? How do I get recruiters to find me? How do I get them to call me? How do I get past them? How come they're telling me I'm too junior? How come they sent me on an interview? I'm not getting feedback. And I just found myself talking to all these people and telling them all the things and how it all really works and why it's all happening. And I'm like, I just need to write the book so everyone knows all the things. And so that's where it came from. It was just hearing the stuff from people over and over again. And then I decided the book shouldn't just be me soapboxing, like like here's great recruiting and how. So it took me 2 years to do all this research, interviews, just learning from people. And I put myself on this journey of curiosity versus I know all the things. And it ended up being really cool. And so I think that's why I took off because, yeah, it wasn't just me parading around my opinion. There's just a lot of expertise in there.
Yeah. Amazing. And again, that's search in plain sight. So we'll put a link in the podcast so people can find that on Amazon and buy it.
Cool.
Um, but let's dive into some of the details of that book and different expertise that you have. So you emphasize in the book, if I remember right, recruiters don't find jobs for candidates, they find candidates for jobs, right? Which is kind of what we just talked about a little bit. I kind of clarified that. But how should executives shift their mindset and approach their job search differently because of this?
Mm-hmm. And I think just to level set and let everyone know, if you think about putting yourself in the recruiter's shoes, like my inbox is full. It's full of people saying, "Hey, here's my resume. Can you check it out? Hey, I need a job. Do you have anything?" Hey, it's very transactional and hey, can you help me today with what I'm looking for right now? And the chances that I have the perfect role for you today are pretty slim because like you were saying, clients are the ones that are hiring. And so if I'm working on a few different roles, like what are the chances that one of the five people that email me on a day-to-day basis, and sometimes it could be 20 people or just my inbox can explode some days. And
Mhm.
um, the people that understand how it works, it's all about framing. So instead of saying, "Hey, can you look at my resume?" or "Hey, do you have a job for me today?" It's more so, you know what? You probably don't have a job for me today. However, I would love to know you. I think you're someone that does work in my space. Here's what I'm known for. So when you have a role that opens up, think of me for these kinds of things. And the people that can really like plant those seeds very well of where they add value, they'll
Yeah.
be remembered because I view recruiting as journey matching. And the candidates that are really, really good at describing the journeys, not just the chronological resume, but the journeys. Like I'm good at taking companies from here to here. Think of me if you hear of a company going from there to there. That's what I do. And then, hey, by the way, I can help you with your searches. Do you know anyone, if you need folks doing XYZ, like what kind of searches are you working on? Maybe they can open up their network to help me find candidates for what, the roles are that I have that are actively going on. So the people that approach it as framing it to be remembered and being helpful, they stand out. It's few and far between because the rest of it is like, do you have something today? Can you help me out today? Sort of thing.
Yeah. I I always like comparing it on the job search of, there's the people that when they're on a road trip, they're gonna know where the gas station is so that their gas light doesn't come on and then they're
Mm-hmm.
panic. Sometimes you can't control it, right? Sometimes your car breaks down, but I like comparing it to people that, they know where the gas station is. They have it all mapped out so they can reach out to you and say, hey, consider me for future roles. I'm not in a dire need, but I'm really ready to make a change. That's what I think a lot of people get stuck up on for candidates purposes of, hey, this is like, I just got laid off and I have to find a role
Mm-hmm.
for my family. So we always say, hey, make sure that you're ready just in case something happens. But I love
I
I
love
love that
this.
point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love your analogy so much. I've never heard that before. And I would, I guess, take it as the next step and say, the people that there's people that like the gas runs out. There's people where they know where the next gas station is. There's people who have no idea where the next gas station is, but they see one right now and they fill it up, right? They're like, I'm going to fill up my tank now because who knows? And so those are the people that are responding to recruiters all the time, even if they're happy, or they're reaching out to recruiters. Hey, just checking in. How are you? I have people that reach out to me every 6 months, every year, and this stuff goes on for like a decade, literally, and
Mhm.
they'll just want to know how my business is or how I'm doing. And we just actually know each other. We know kids' names and it's
Mhm.
a relationship, and it's not just when we all need each other. Right. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would just say just investing in that all the time versus when you need it or it's coming. Like it just makes such a
Mhm.
big difference.
Yeah, yeah. I just spoke with somebody else on our podcast yesterday, and they were talking about kind of a similar thing of, hey, I talked to somebody for 10 years before I
Mm-hmm.
placed them, right? And so it's that relationship and
Yeah.
making sure you're kind of being transparent of, hey, I want to get to know you. So I like that point of view. And I want to keep talking about that, but I want to kind of hit on another point from your book. I believe it's in chapter 4 of your book, talking about magnetizing your job search. So what does it actually mean to become a magnet? And how can candidates implement this in their practice?
Yeah. So I think a lot about what job seeker frustrations are. And typically it's that they're knocking on doors, they're applying to jobs, they're reaching out and saying, hey, do you have anything? Do you know anyone? And they're working their network that way. But if you think about it, flipping it a little bit, and like I was saying, the planting seeds and assuming no one has anything, and it's people will have something at some point, or someone will know someone later. And so planting seeds so that you create this gravity around you. So roles come to you and then you can just, I don't say kick back, but roles are coming to you. And so then you're in the position of like, huh, that's interesting. So it's all about your goal of that call. And like I was saying earlier with the recruiter, just assuming maybe they don't have anything. So it's planting seeds so they remember where you add value. But even if you're networking with your network, a lot of people say, oh, well, I know someone at that company, but that company isn't interesting to me, or that company is not hiring. But it's not about that person at that company. It's about that person's network, or recruiters reach out to that person. So you're like, hey, person, if recruiters reach out to you and you're not interested personally, please have them reach out to me. And so now you've cut the line because you're a referral. And so it's all about just
Mm,
positioning yourself so roles come to you later
yeah.
by being memorable in the conversations now.
hmm I That's a great point. I hope people are listening to this because I'm telling you, I talk to executives all day long. Just like I'm sure you do, right? You're talking to executives all day long, clients all day long. So many times I'll have people say, hey, I've reached out to this many recruiters, I'm not hearing anything. And switching that mindset of saying, hey, how are you? How's business going? I know it's
Mm-hmm.
crazy. This year, 2025 has been crazy. I know Q1 was crazy. People talking to you about that, getting, a sense of how you're doing and creating relationships with a lot of different people in their network and then growing it so that they are that magnet.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that. And when I don't want to. I'm going to shift gears, but I really like that point. So I hope everybody listened to that. But I want to talk about interviewing. Your experience when talking about interviewing, what separates a great interviewer or interviewee from an average one at the executive level that you place at?
Now, this is going to sound so fundamental,
hmm
but people that interview really well, especially at the executive level, they match their background and experience to the job.
hmm
And it sounds so simple, but I can't tell you how many times I'll pitch a role, say, hey, I'm working with this company. Here's the role. Here's what it is. Here's why they're hiring. Here's how you define success for the role. And then the person just hits play in their head on their rehearsed monologue going through. And I'm like, hey, what do you think? Does that fit you? Is that interesting? They're like, well, let me first tell you about my background. And they just go through their 20-minute background explanation, but they
Mm,
don't draw any correlation between their background and what I just said, and folks that interview really well, that we're actually having a conversation. If there's no, like, they have stories in their back pocket ready to go, like they're prepared, but it's not like I'm getting these canned answers talking to a robot. And so the
mhm,
people that are interviewing really well, they're like, you know what? That sounds really interesting. I've done that three different ways, and this is a little bit different. And I have a question about that. Let me ask you, is there this kind of buy-in for that? So now we're talking, and I'm like, oh, wow. Like, clearly this person has done this before. And
mhm,
they're just really good at matching, calling out differences. And of course, I have to add that they're very structured in their communication. They don't forget the question. They tend to speak in, like, not going on these tangents and telling these long stories. Um, and they are succinct. So
mhm.
which is hard, but yes.
Yeah. And it's so simple. It's so simple because it's simple to say, but harder to do, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
find myself doing a similar thing where if somebody asks me a question, I've got, a list of things that I can answer. But if you're actually talking to the person, not just talking about a subject, right? I think it's important, especially because I think it's the same thing with resumes, what we do, right? I mean, are you creating something? Are you responding to somebody just to throw it out there and hope that they can put all the information together and say, okay, this is exactly what you're saying? Or are they going to take the extra time to say, okay, how can I consolidate this in a really easily digestible format?
Mm-hmm.
So I really like what you're talking about there. And, listening to what the question is and answering that question, not saying, you know what, I have a lot of information. You tell me what you think with everything. Because I think that's exhausting. It's
Yeah.
exhausting. I'm sure it's
Yeah.
exhausting on your end.
And not all recruiters will make the jump of drawing, like, for example, like, maybe in your head you go through and you say your whole background, and of course this is applicable to this job, but the recruiter might not see what you see because they didn't live it. And so folks are really good that interview really well. They're good at just calling it out and saying, here's why this is like super applicable to this role. And they say that versus assuming the recruiter is going to draw, all the correlations for them. Because, and also maybe the recruiter's more junior, right? So you kind of have to help them present you in the best light.
Mhm. And it's hard. It's hard when you're the candidate. I mean, looking in the candidate's shoes, I think it's very hard based off of all the conversations that I have for people to take what's their blood, sweat, and tears, what's the last 2 decades of work, and say, you know what, actually, they're only going to care about 5 points that are actually relevant to this, right?
Yes.
Five key subjects that you could talk about when you have 2 decades of experience, right? And that's just a random example, but I just talked to somebody yesterday about this, and they said, I've got experience in this area, in this area, in this area. And I said, okay, what are you even looking at? Because I don't think this is applicable for every position you're going to apply for, right? So what I'm really trying to say is I totally agree. So
Mm-hmm.
I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, no,
I
it's,
think it's
and
such an important topic.
I always tell people, just let the interviewer lead. I know you have all these things you want to shove into this half-hour conversation, but if you don't let them get what they need out of it, you're not going to move ahead,
Hmm.
And I've had candidates be like, they didn't even ask me about that thing. And that's so, I'm like, because they know you did that thing. They want to know this other stuff, So there's a delicate balance of selling yourself, but also like letting them stay and control the conversation. I can't tell you how many times I'll ask them a question. They go, cool, let me actually talk about this. It's like, that's not what I asked you. So
Yeah.
there's a reason that people are asking certain questions. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I would just let them lead and not try to take the whole conversation by the reins. And then you end up talking the whole time and running out of time.
Yeah. I really hope people are listening to this. I hope people, obviously, we're not live right now, but
Yeah.
people listen to this and take this advice because I think it's crucial for finding that next position and getting through the interview process and making sure
Hmm.
you're landing a position. Because I do know there's a lot of pressure, right? You've got a family to support, you've got bills to pay. And so I think that's why
Hmm.
people get so stuck in, I just have to get everything out there so I don't miss something. But I think it's really you have to kind of buckle up and just go with what's happening in the interview. So I really like that. And I want to talk about a story
Yeah.
that you shared in your book. It's about Jay,
Hmm.
if I'm remembering correctly. So he shifted his strategy, landed a CIO role, right, with board exposure, if I remember right. So
Hmm.
what common mindset shifts do candidates need to make like Jay did? So, to show up in a more successful placement?
Yeah. Yeah. I opened the book with Jay because he was one of those conversations I was having back in 2020 that just, I was like, I just need to write this book for all these people, including Jay. And he was just at this point. So his boss, he got a new boss and he was at this company for a long time and he thought he's going to be there and retire from there. And then he got layered, boss brought in his own people. And this
Mhm.
happens a lot. And he's like, shoot, I have to look. I haven't looked really in like 15 years. How do I get recruiters to call me? All the things I was saying in the beginning. And I called him every few months or so, and he was just getting more and more upset and depressed about the whole process. And then, long story short, he landed this awesome role, like you were talking about. And I
Sure.
had asked him what he did, and I asked a lot of other people what they did. And first and foremost, it comes down to mindset. I was expecting him to say that, his resume, or he found some great words to say, or he figured out his stories to tell, or whatever the answer would be of how he interviewed so great and got this big, great job. But he was like, I found my confidence. And, and that's easier said than done. I
Yeah.
know job searching, it can take a couple months if you were laid off, just to come to terms with the situation.
Mhm.
Um, but you need to, before you start interviewing, you have to be in the right mental space because you won't come across the right way. And, you know, my biggest advice to folks would be to find your fan club, figure out what gives you energy, and figure
Mhm.
out what doesn't, and stop doing the things that are like killing your confidence. Like it's mental, like if you're applying to ads every day, you're waking up, looking online, applying, getting ghosted, black hole, you're just very upset that you're not hearing back. Just stop doing that. Just stop. Just don't do it. Maybe like
Yeah.
10% of the time. But if it's making you upset, if you're getting imposter syndrome, if you're worried about that, like just give things that give you energy. And that's why I always say, like, find that fan club. Someone is rooting for you. You might be surprised who it is. Maybe it's someone you worked with 10 years ago. And just own it. Be like, oh my goodness, I'm so bad at keeping in touch. How are you? It's been forever. And honestly, yeah, sure, I'm looking, but like, I want to know how you're doing. And just kind of people are cheering you on. But, it could be people leading to people leading to people, and just unexpected things happen when you talk to people. And
Mhm.
so I'm always a fan of like, just get off the internet, get off the email as soon as you can. Switch from email to text, switch to text as soon as you can. Talk to someone, talk to someone. That's where you're going to get energy, and that's where fun things are going to happen. But this land, especially nowadays, I don't post ads. But I know, and what I'm hearing from everyone is with ChatGPT and the resumes and just
Mhm.
the auto apply, and nothing, who knows what's real now, and the resumes all look like the job. And so internal recruiters are inundated, and it's very hard. And so
Yeah.
I'd say, like, of course, spend time on that, but I wouldn't spend all your time on that if it's draining your energy.
Yeah.
So I'd say mindset, confidence, surround yourself with things that give you energy, people that give you energy. And that's where it's got to start, and before I would say, when you start interviewing, before you're there, you're just going to come across as, talking about the wrong things, or just people don't want to hire that person that doesn't come across with that confidence.
Mhm. Yeah, I could be wrong, but honestly, with this whole podcast, this whole episode, what I feel like is a really strong connector is focusing on the people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Focus on the people that you know, people that you don't know, get to know them, not just what they can offer you. I mean, it's the same thing with sales. It's the same thing with pretty much everything that I've seen in life. If you go to a networking event and you only talk about yourself, right? Nobody cares. Nobody wants
Yeah.
to hear that.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to talk about themselves. It's their favorite subject. And so ask other people, get to know them, go back to somebody you knew 10 years ago, talk to them, catch up with them, but don't just ask for something, and see what you can do to help them as well. And things will just naturally start to come, and then you can be that magnet. So I really like all that information. And um, I appreciate everything that you've shared with us today. I'd love to give every listener a chance to know, if they're listening, they say, "Hey, I'm your typical client, or I'm your typical candidate," and they'd love to be able to reach out to you or see what's developing with your business. What's the best way to reach out or follow up with you?
Yeah. No, I love LinkedIn. So please connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Somer, Somer Hackley, Hackley. You can find the book on Amazon. I also did the audio recording myself, so that's on Audible. That
Yeah,
was very hard, but I
yeah,
wanted
I'm
to do it
sure.
myself.
Yeah,
So that's there too. And Yeah, and I think I would just leave people with, there's a couple, I quote Adam Grant quite a bit in the book, and it's all about approaching everything as a giver with a giving mindset. And also a last just quick takeaway, just piggybacking up on the last thing you said was a really cool and easy way to network is to introduce people to other people. And so if you're making those correlations and connections and you're helping and you're someone who's top of mind, then you'll be top of mind. And so it all just kind of comes back. And
Mhm.
so, but yeah, just approaching everything with how can I help or here's how I want to help you. You just never know. So yeah, that's what I leave it with.
Such great insights. And again, just so everybody knows, Search in Plain Sight is the book. Thank you, Somer, for everything. Thank you for being a guest. Hopefully we can have you on again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.